Hello and welcome to Plastic Kraken. Today we're going to be taking a look at the best skirmish games of 2024. So first of all, I do just want to say I've been sick the last couple of weeks, so it's really taken its toll on my voice. So if my voice goes in and out sort of thing, please just bear with me. It has just taken its toll. But with that said, let's just jump into it and I'll explain what we're really looking at with this list. So I'm looking at games that are available or will be available later this year. Games that a newcomer will actually be able to find. So I'm not just going to recommend, some old game that you can't find anywhere or you have to go and pay a fortune for on eBay. I really want these to be games that, you can go out and find them today if you want to. They're stocked in various different places. And or you'd be able to get them ordered into your friendly local game store. They also going to have a bit of a new player focus, so I'll just assume you don't know anything about these games and explain them to you, um, what they're involved, what the sort of theme is, that sort of thing. Just so you have like a good overview of what's involved. I've also looked at sort of ones that have a good rule set, interesting settings, different levels of complexity, and are well supported with new releases or rules wise. And I've also tried to pick sort of fun, interesting, thematic games. I'll also talk a little bit about value and price. So I think they're not always the same thing. I think value, there's definitely some starter boxes out there, for example, that offer better value than other games. Um, and I'm also looking at games from well-known companies. So this is a game that you can rely on to be supported. Like I said, you can order it even if your friendly local game store don't have it in stock. Um, and yeah, and just from like trusted companies that make good models. So we'll kick off with Kill Team. So this is the big boy, I suppose, of the list in terms of it being from Games Workshop. Obviously, they're very well known. And Kill Team is sort of the little brother of Warhammer 40,000. You can use the models from Kill Team in Warhammer 40,000 as well. And that's something I always value. Like when you can double dip with your models, use them in different game systems. I just think that's something that's excellent. And it means that even if you lose interest in one game system over time, those models aren't essentially dead to you. They can be used somewhere else. Um, so yeah, certainly the case here with these. Um, Another positive of Kill Team is it has a relatively cheap starter set with two very different sort of teams in it, very thematic teams. So just explain Kill Team a little bit, I suppose. So whereas 40,000 Warhammer 40,000 is about these big epic battles, Kill Team is more sort of like almost like Black Ops teams going in, taking someone out, securing an area sort of thing. Um, and yeah, the teams are very much sort of themed that way. So every member of your team is different. It's not like Warhammer 40,000 where you have, a unit of 10 dudes who will do the same thing, and maybe one of them has a slightly different weapon or something like that. You tend to have a mix of different specialists who have different specialist weapons, and then you have maybe like a few generic guys on your team as well. Uh, So yeah, the starter set for this is good. It includes two teams, as I said. You do get some sort of like minimal, what I'd call it, more like scattered terrain rather than full terrain. Pardon me. And you get tokens and things included in there, as well as the core rules. Um, but yeah, it's a good jumping off point. You can certainly play with that, but you might need some additional purchases, which I'll get to in a minute. Also, this has multiple entry points, a bit like your mum. So you don't have to go in with the starter set if you don't want to. You can just pick up the team you're interested in, and you can grab the Kill Team's essential set. You can grab your rule book and a bit of terrain, and you're off to the races with that. So you don't have to go in with this Kill Team starter set if you're not interested in those teams. They do also release boxes about every 3 months, where it'll be two teams and some like a couple of pieces of scattered terrain. And those are also very popular. So if you like both the teams in there, again, you can get involved in that. So yeah, it's good that it has lots of different options really. And like I said, that starter set is pretty solid. There's also loads of different factions and teams to choose from. So you're bound to find something in there that really tickles your fancy. Whether it's from like a painting perspective or just like the theme of the team, there's bound to be something there. It's also a very sort of competitive game with a fair bit of strategy to it. So you have sort of different like tactical ploys you're trying to do. Different teams might have like little booby traps they can set up. Um, Different ways to sort of like sabotage the enemy team. All different sorts of things like that. So every team does play differently. Um, and yeah, so you might want to do like a bit of research into what team you want to play. Um, but yeah, it's just very like you know the flavor of this game quite quickly, um, and it's just like a good, exciting game to play. And from that competitive point of view, if it is, if you're looking for a game that you can go and play at tournaments and that sort of thing, it is a game that does seem tournament play, and a game that you're probably not going to have too much trouble finding someone nearby who will play this game with you. It's also got very little in the way of list building, so that might be a positive or a negative, depending on how you see it. So really, it's that you have a bunch of specialists, and maybe you can only take a certain number of them. So you can't always take every single specialist in every game. And then so you'll usually have like a mix of the specialist guys and then some generic guys. And so that's about the extent of the list building, really. So on to the negatives of Guild Team. So I'd say many of the teams require buying two boxes. And the reason I would say that is a negative is because you can't just go and buy your one box and you've got your team. If you really want to get the most out of it, you're having to drop, say, like 35 quid twice just to get all of the different specialists, to face uh, all the different teams you might go up against. And that's just something that, like, personally, I don't like having to buy the same thing twice. You can get away with it, obviously, if you're just playing with friends and things like that, like a bit of proxying, a bit of kit bashing, magnetizing. But certainly, if we're looking at this from the perspective of a new player who might not be comfortable doing all those things, I do think it's a bit cheeky of them to expect you to buy two boxes for some of these teams. Um, and maybe they don't, maybe they'll think you'll just play an unoptimized list. But obviously, a lot of people just want to go in with the best list they possibly can. And often that will require having access to all the different specialists. Um, but I will just say with that, there are some teams though that are genuinely one box teams. And so you can always seek out those teams if that's how you want to go. The rules for some teams also require additional books. So yeah, that is what it is. If you don't want to have to buy a bunch of additional books, there are other means by which you can find the necessary rules. So the big one being Wikipedia. But yeah, I appreciate obviously not everyone is always comfortable doing things like that. And yeah, I'm just mentioning it as an option, um, and as something to bear in mind if the rules for your team are locked behind an additional book that you're gonna have. It also has what I would say are overly difficult line of sight rules. So it is something that takes a bit of getting your head around. Um, maybe even watching a different YouTube video about how exactly the line of sight works. Just because as it's written, it's not always super clear. And I'm sure if you had to ask most people what the worst part of the rule set is, I'm sure that is probably what they'll point to, or at least that it's the one of the toughest points of learning the game. I've also put as a potential negative that a new edition of the game is expected uh, relatively soon, so probably autumn time, if not summer. Um, so that could be a negative in terms of, you could buy something that is soon invalidated, or if you buy in your rule book, for example, it might not be too long before a new one comes along. So yeah, just something I will just want to mention, just so you know about it going in. Um, they haven't said anything about the new edition yet. It's not confirmed that it's coming. But Games Workshop are very predictable usually in terms of their release cycles, and so we would expect a new edition this year. But I also don't think that it's going to be, broad sweeping changes. I would imagine it's more going to be tidying things up. Hopefully, they will look at the line of sight rules, for example, and more tweaking than reinventing the wheel with that. Another negative is FOMO boxes for this game sell out fast. So, like I mentioned, they release these sets like Kill Team Nightmare is the most recent one at the time of this video, where you get your two teams and your bit of terrain, and they sell out within minutes. And even if you are sat at your computer or on your phone, you go to your website of choice and you try and buy these boxes, you are by no means guaranteed to get one. Um, and what that could mean is that the team that you're most interested in, it sells out, and then you're not able to actually buy that team for 2, 3 months until they start selling it separately. So again, just something to be aware of with this game, just so you know what you're getting into, sort of going into really. Moving on to our next game then. We have Marvel Crisis Protocol. So this is superheroes game, very much like, you're playing as the Avengers. You go in and you fight in another team. Laying into some supervillains or something like that. And the teams you can mix and match. You can have heroes and villains together, much like in the comics. You can have pretty much whatever you want to do. You can do in this game. It's an easy to learn rule set that's hard to master, so there's a lot of depth to it. So you have like sorry, it's my voice that I was talking about at the beginning. You have a character card which lists out all the sort of super, uh, what was the word I'm trying? Superpowers, that's the word. Superpowers and moves that you can do, your different attacks. And sometimes, like I suppose where the complexity comes in with that is like the sort of different interactions between different characters and the timing of some of the dice rolls and things like that can be a little bit complex. But it doesn't really have to be. It is, for the most part, easy to learn, simple, good fun. You start blasting out some of these powers and things, and you're destroying terrain, you're throwing cars at each other, and you're just having like this epic battle. It's just a great game, really. Another positive of this, the rules are free, and any updates to them are also free. There's no books to buy, there's no codexes or anything else. Everything that you need is free. There's also loads of characters with fun thematic abilities. So pretty much anyone you can think of in the MCU has been brought out in this game, and many more besides that. If you're a comic book fan, you will find lots to love here. And again, multiple points of entry. I won't make the same joke again, but you essentially have the Earth's Mightiest core set, which is the most recent starter set for this game. That's got everything you really need in it in terms of like terrain, a couple of teams, dice, your measuring tools, all that sort of stuff, tokens and things like that. And then they also had an older core set, which is a bit cheaper, and has some of the same characters in it, some different ones. that you can also still pick up at some places if you're interested in that one more so than the new one. I think for most people, the new one is probably better. Um, but it's very much your choice. You could go with either one, and you're not making a mistake really. Um, Another thing that I think is good about these, if you are into your painting and stuff like that, is you're not having to sit there and crank out 10 Space Marines that all look exactly the same. Like every model looks different. You get to use a range of colors, techniques, all that sort of stuff. So you can really go to town with these models. Everyone that I've ever painted anyway has been an absolute joy. And yeah, they're just you never really get tired of painting them. And they are on the larger side as well. Generally, there's some smaller characters, obviously, but there and some really big ones as well. I should say. So that does make painting them a little bit easier as well, just having that extra sort of size to them. I do find helps make them a bit easier. There's also so you have different game types in here, different game sizes or rosters, so you're not always doing the same thing every game. You might have to secure objectives or grab something and run off with it. There's lots going on, and in terms of like the rosters, you build a roster of characters, and then each game sort of has a threat level. So let's say it's a threat level of 17. You've then got to pick from your characters. Each character has a threat level. You got to pick up to like 17 points essentially of threat. So depend on the mission and the threat level. You might take a different sort of team from your roster. So you pick your characters from that. Um, Pardon me. And get going. So yeah, just swapping in and out a couple of characters in a game can have a huge difference on what happens. Obviously, like the different objectives, different game types. It all switches stuff up. So it's just a game I find just never gets boring. No two games are the same. And yeah, just a great fun little game really. And your models never get blown off the board turn one. So when it's not for every single character, I will just say, but the majority of characters, what happens is if you take a certain amount of damage, you essentially like take a knee and you get back up again on the next turn, and you're now considered sort of injured. So you flip your character card over onto your injured side, and you might have like different abilities on that injured side as well, like different amount of health. So it switches things up like that as well. And some characters can even become like more dangerous on the injured side. So you really have to think of like, do I want to put this person on the injured side at this time, or am I going to be helping this person like pop off on the next turn? So there is like tactical depth even in something as simple as like dealing damage to your opponent. Um, there's lots of I mean, there's lots of new character packs and terrain on the way as well. It's a game they keep supporting, so every few months you get new stuff coming out for this game, and yeah, it's there's just so much out there, and still as well, so many characters they haven't even got to yet. So yeah, it's definitely got legs on it. This one. In terms of the negatives, so I'd say because it's a licensed game, the models can be a bit pricey. Um, but having said that, um, I don't think I've ever paid full price for any of my models that I've got for Marvel. It's very easy to find them on sale or on discount. Uh, and like often, I mean, I'm literally talking like 50% off sometimes, and things like that. They also do like affiliation packs, so it might be like an X-Men affiliation pack, or Guardians of the Galaxy affiliation pack, where instead of getting your usual two characters that you normally get in a box, you'll get like four in a box. And then you're making a saving over just buying those two boxes separately. But that can get you up and running with a particular team that you're interested in very quickly. In terms of another negative, so I'd say there's no map with the starter sets, like not even a paper one or a cardboard one, which is something I always just wish is just included in every starter set, so you literally have everything you need right from the off. So you do need to make that additional purchase of getting something, so you're not having to like use your imagination, imagining like a road beneath your feet or whatever. But yeah, that's not the end of the world probably for most people. Just something I wanted to mention. Um, they're also beautiful models, but some of the earlier ones, so certainly some of the ones in the original core set are guilty of this. They can be, pardon me, they can be very fiddly. So anyone that's put together the original Captain Marvel, for example, will probably have like Vietnam flashbacks of building that thing. Um, like I can't exactly remember every detail of it, but I'm sure like her arm was in multiple pieces, and yeah, it was not a fun time. It's not the end of the world. Not every model is like it by any stretch of the imagination. There's definitely just a few that are, uh, yeah, like they have some fun memories for the people that put them together. Um, but like I said, it's not the end of the world. It's just that if this is your first uh, venture into the hobby, there are some models that I think would be challenging for a new player. Moving on to the next game. So Halo Flashpoint, I did a video on this recently where I went in depth on everything that you need to know about Halo Flashpoint. So please do give that a watch if you're interested. But positives this, so it's Halo. So if you're interested in Halo, say no more. This is something you're probably going to be interested in. I think it's probably the most beginner friendly option on this entire list. And the reason for that is you've got two starter sets, so Recon and Spartan Edition. So you don't have to go for the big boy Spartan Edition if you just want to dip your toe in and get up and running with this game. You can just go with the cheaper game. It's also based on Dead Zone, which is again a beginner friendly sort of game, and has an excellent rule set that a lot of people sort of hold in high regard, especially one that's easy for new players to get into. And I think this, from what we've seen so far, looks even more so than Dead Zone. So yeah, just looking like it's going to be an excellent starting point for someone getting into the hobby. You don't have to build even the models. The models are pre-assembled. They come in two different colors. So you got red for one of the Spartan teams, blue for the other. Um, you've also got some really good terrain included in there that you don't have to paint. You just pop it together and you're done. So you can literally just open this box up, have a look through, pop that terrain together, and you're going to be playing the same day, which is not true of like every game by any means. So I just think all of that considered, amazing, amazing option for brand new players. And very thematic to Halo, if that's what you're interested in. Lots of game modes that you would recognize. And so I just think there's lots to be excited about here. We already know there's multiple waves coming for this game. So the first wave after launch will be some more Spartans, but there are other teams coming. So we already get the elites with the Spartan edition, for example. We know that the other factions are going to be showing up at some point as well. So yeah, I just think the potential for this game is really, really good. And it's a game you're going to be able to teach like your partner how to play this, and they're going to be able to play it along with you, that same day that you've cut the box open. So I just think it's really, really cool from that perspective. Negatives, so it's not out yet. That's a bit of a negative because I wish it was out, but it's not going to be out until something like October time, I believe. And it's mostly just Spartans at launch. So if you're really interested in just the Covenant or something like that, and all the different units that you would expect for that, you are going to be waiting a little longer for that. Um, there's also no multi-part kits for veterans, people that just want to build it, every aspect of their guys and put them in all different custom poses and things like that. It's not really something you're going to be able to do with the models that are available at launch, at least. But you can customize them with paint schemes and things like that, which I think is really cool. You can really go to town with them and yeah, I think just the painting part of it for me personally, will provide enough variety. But I appreciate not everyone has that viewpoint. Another negative I put is just about Master Chief availability. So, yeah, with this one, initially, if you ordered by a certain date from Mantic, you got you could get the Master Chief included with your Spartan edition. Um, Now you would be very much reliant on like your friendly local gaming store having a Master Chief available for you. But otherwise, you would have to buy paint set, which is £35. Comes with some paints. Now, if you needed those paints, to paint the rest of your guys in your box, and that might not be too bad. But for a lot of us who already have all the paints we need, having him locked behind a paint set is not ideal. Although we do know that he will be released later, so I've put it in there as a negative just because I know obviously people want to get their hands on Master Chief, um, and they're sort of limited in how they can do so. But it's a problem that will go away with time. The final negative is just, can it be out now? I really want to play this game. So we mentioned their Dead Zone, so let's just quickly cover that as well. So this is easy learned game. There's no measuring. So just like with Halo, you have these 3-inch squares on the board. That's how you move around. You not have to whip out the tape measure and things like that. Everything you need to play is included in the starter set, much like with Halo, which again is excellent. I just love it when you can just make one purchase and you're good. And this is very much like that. There's 2 starter sets to choose from as well, so you can just pick based on the factions that are included in terms of which models you like the most. And then other than that, they're basically the same. Much like with Kill Team, where you can take your models from Kill Team into Warhammer 40,000. You can do the same here with Dead Zone into their sort of Warhammer 40,000 equivalent of Firefight, which I won't be covering here because it's not a skirmish thing really, but it's more of a big army thing, same as Warhammer. But that's another game that has like very passionate fans and streamlined sort of rule set. So again, something you could look at for future, and another way to get more use out of these models. The terrain is really, really good, modular, so you can put it into different configurations and things like that. So again, I think that's another really good positive of this set. And this is plastic terrain with this one, uh, which is again a bit of a step up, I'd say, from the terrain included in the Halo one, but I can understand why they went in the direction they did with the Halo one because it's all you know, pre-printed and everything. You're not having to paint it or anything like that. Again, loads of different factions with this. So if you're interested in a faction from the Warhammer setting, there's probably some sort of equivalent here for you with this game. So for example, orcs. If you're interested in orcs in Warhammer, you've got the Marauders in here, which lore-wise and that they are different. But it gives you some sort of equivalent place to start from, if in terms of like the aesthetics of the teams, if that's sort of what's going to sway you one way or the other. Another good thing about this, so you get the rule book included, but you also get the force list. So your force list is what you use for army building. So you're not having to buy additional books or anything like that. You get all your points and everything, and then you can use that to build your team. So you can buy other models to bring in and swap things out. So it's very easy to get even more use out of the teams here and build upon them. And I think it's just excellent value for money in terms of these sets as well. So both the sets are the same price, and yeah, you get everything you need here. So it's literally just a one purchase sort of thing. In terms of negatives, then there's not a lot to go on, but I've put some models of resin. So personally, I'm just all about plastic. It's in the channel name, and yeah, like resin, I don't really like resin models very much personally. You may feel differently or might not have a problem with it. And I think, but it is limited. I think in the starter sets, I think it's like one model per team is resin. Um, So it's not the end of the world by any means, and I wouldn't let it put you off if that is sort of how you're feeling at this point. If it's just about that one resin model. Um, Another negative I put is just about around the build instructions. So if you're used to Warhammer build instructions, for example, or if you're a new player, um, they're not as in depth as what Games Workshop do. They don't hold your hand in terms of do this piece, now do this piece, now do this piece, now do this piece. It's more you know, uh, just like one picture that shows you where all the different bits go, and then you just get on with it, essentially. I just think like that's maybe one area where they could improve for the future. Um, but again, it's not it's not rocket science at the end of the day, either. But yeah, I just want to mention it because it could be a smidge more challenging for new players than perhaps uh, some of the games workshop models. Um, I've also put it's not as popular if you're looking for competitive games. So a lot of the other games on this list, you will be able to find games for people, relatively easily. Dead Zone, it might be in your area. There's plenty of people who play it. I suppose it's the same for every game, really. You are dependent a little bit on the people around you in terms of what games you can play, uh, or what games you can play often, anyway. Then maybe you have to be the person in your area that sort of champions it a little bit and shows people what a good game is. So yeah, but just something to mention. Like it's not. I just thought best to mention that you're not going to be able to probably find an opponent to play against perhaps quite as easy as you would a kill team. The next game then we have Warcry. So Warcry, I guess, is the fantasy sort of equivalent to Kill Team, where your models from this can be used in Age of Sigmar. So again, more double dipping of those models, which I think is good. And Age of Sigmar models, I think, are just excellent. I don't think there's any range of models that is as good as Age of Sigmar. Um, I think I don't say very few people would disagree. I'm sure some people would, but I think the general consensus amongst a lot of people is that Age of Sigmar has the best looking models of any range out there. So, these Warcry teams, they tend to be very, very good models. Fun to put together, fun to paint, fun to look at, just excellent sculpts and things like that. The team that makes models for Age of Sigmar absolutely kills it. Um, so yeah, I don't think there's any complaints on that front. And again, loads of fun teams to choose from, loads of different, depending on whatever you're interested in, like vampires, elves, tree people, skeletons. Like there's something for everyone. Um, there is some element of list building as well, so you can take some of your other models from Age of Sigmar, not just ones that are like bespoke Warcry teams, and you can use them in this as well. So if you are already into that rule set, I think that is like a bonus towards Warcry. And it's also much like Kill Team supported with regular new releases. I think it's one of the up there with probably like what Halo will be. Um, like it's a very sort of like beer and pretzels type game where you can get in like a few games in the evening. That is easy to pick up and play. Um, yeah, and it's like just like a uh, fun sort of game where like elevation and things like that can matter. Um, and yeah, you're just running around, chopping stuff up, and it's good times all around, really. In terms of the negatives, though, I do think this has perhaps some more negatives than some of the other games for me personally. So I think number one is it has a weak starter set. Doesn't present good value, I should say. So it's not as good a starter set as what Kill Team has. Uh, you get essentially like half teams almost. Like you're gonna have to buy more models to get yourself up to a full warband. We also know that with Age of Sigmar fourth edition on the way, they are getting rid of some models from the Age of Sigmar range, and that includes some Warcry models. And I think there's a lot of people that aren't happy about that. For me personally, how I feel about it is it kind of tells me that they don't, well, it implies that they don't value Warcry very highly in some fashion because it's almost like, oh, we're not going to use these in Age of Sigmar anymore, so they can just get in the bin. And it's like, oh, people still want to use them in Warcry. Yeah, 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 like we don't care. And they're just getting rid of them. It may point to perhaps in the next edition they're going to go in a bit of a different direction with Warcry. I'm not sure. Um, I think Warcry is like the only game that Games Workshop have ever like won an award for, if I'm not mistaken. So there's potential for them to keep it around for that, but also I don't know, like the way they've just been in the war bands, it also makes me worry that maybe it would go away at some point. So certainly by getting rid of the war bands the way that they are, it gives me less faith in buying new stuff for Warcry, and uh, I guess like the shelf life of the game and the teams, because some of those war bands that go away are not very old, or not too. This isn't a situation where they're just very, very old models or anything like that. These some of them are quite new, and to just be getting rid of them so soon is a bit worrying for me. Um, they also release Warcry stuff very, very close to Kill Team stuff, if not sometimes even the same day. And I just think that's a bit silly as well, because if you want to be into both games, so let's say you're already into Kill Team and you think about Warcry, it's kind of hard for some people right now, like money wise and things like that. And so if they want to keep up with a game, like expecting them to purchase two not cheap boxes on the same day to keep up with this game, yeah, I think that's a bit of an ask, and I just don't know why they don't stagger it more. Um, But yeah, only a problem if you were into both, and only a problem if, like most people, you don't have infinite hobby money. Um, I also mentioned here that some teams do require books, so much like with Kill Team, sometimes the rules are locked behind books that you might need to purchase. But yeah, I won't dwell on that too much. And availability. So some of the best value places to start this game would be like older boxes that they've done, and they're not readily available. They might be available at the odd store, might still have a copy laying around of the box that you're interested in, or you might be able to go on eBay and pay a bit more for it. But yeah, I think the best boxes that Warcry have done are not currently available, is how I would sort of, or are not easily available. And I do see that as a bit of a negative. Next game I'm going to mention something a bit different. So Walking Dead All Out War. So this was a game that came out a few years ago, and then it disappeared when like Mantic no longer had the license. But it's coming back, I believe, in May of this year. Um, and it's coming back with like all of the new stuff sort of like bundled into one book. Um, It's a game where obviously it's based on The Walking Dead, so more more so the comic than the TV show. So it's entirely based on the comic, but a lot of it will be recognizable from the TV show. So if you're interested in The Walking Dead, uh, nice little pickup this one. It's got solo play, cooperative play, and player versus player. So you can play this by yourself, you can play this with a friend, where you both working sort of against the zombies, and you can play this where traditional sort of game against each other, but then you also have the element of the zombies in the middle, munching on anyone that gets in their way. Um, and the way the game works, you have like different actions and things that you can do. You're trying to do different things around the map. Go and pick up weapons and that sort of thing. Um, but your actions can sort of like escalate things. So you have like this little spinny meter that goes up, and the more and more it goes up, uh, the more the zombies become a problem for you, and you can be overwhelmed. So, really fun idea for a game. It's got a really good new starter set, this collector's edition that's coming out with a whole bunch of zombies in it, some of which were, previously only available at different shows, from what I gather. And it's even got like a couple of characters from the Telltale Walking Dead games, sort of like Lee and Clementine, if you ever played those games, as well as like the people you just met, like Rick and Carl and those guys. There's loads and loads of characters that they've done in this as well, and loads of different sets you can buy of like different teams, like the Whisperers, for example. Um, and the models for these, they're kind of a bit basic. Not super basic, but a bit basic. So they're kind of easy to paint fast. Um, they're not the most detailed things in the world. So yeah, you can be up and running with this real quick as well. You can also recreate moments from the comic or TV show, which I think is fun. Like I said, that threat level with the zombies is very cool. And then the different factions all play differently as well. Um, So yeah, that's like there's lots of sort of like fun elements to this game that you can keep building on, keep playing new scenarios, um, as you sort of like build your collection. Um, the negatives, I suppose, is there is lots to buy as well. So the individual sets are quite pricey. If like your favorite character is locked behind, a big set of figures that cost a decent amount of money, that might put you off a little bit. Although I do believe that they are planning to release figures individually at some point as well, so you can buy the ones you want a bit easier without having to buy like a big pack of heroes and zombies that you might not actually be interested in. I did put it as a negative. It's not out yet again. Um, it's out in May, so it's not too long to wait for this one. Um, but yeah, just wanted to mention it just in case it's something you're open to pick up today. You certainly pre-order it. But yeah, it's not something you're going to be able to, get playing with super quick. And then I also mentioned, like for me personally, the team I would most want to play is the Saviors, but they currently seem to be locked behind another game called Here's Negan, where you play as Negan's lieutenants and you're sort of trying to please Negan with your actions and that. And it is like a fun spin-off game to have, I suppose. Um, but yeah, like when all I'm interested in really is the team. It does kind of suck a bit that I can't just buy the team that I'm most interested in because I love Negan. And I just want his little team to play as. It, but yeah, that's about it for that game really. And we'll move on to the next one. So then we have Star Wars Shatterpoint. So big bonus for Star Wars. If you're interested in Star Wars, um, you're away. It's made by the same guys that make Marvel Crisis Protocol. Um, so very many of the positives that I said there would also sort of apply to this. Again, very thematic with Star Wars. Great setting. Uh, Loads of different characters and stuff that they can do. Um, it covers all the different sort of eras, or will do at some point. So you've got stuff from like the prequels, the originals. Um, Nothing for sort of like the Rey and Kylo sort of era yet, which you may see as a positive, you may not. Um, but yeah, it's got a bit of everything in there at the moment. So um, yeah, I think it's a game that you could look at and like you're gonna find something that you think is really cool in there. It's quite a new game, so it's got like very new sort of sensibilities to the rules and the way things work. And you got big, detailed miniatures that, you know, excellent to paint, excellent to build. um, and look just like how you'd expect them to. Um, it's a fun game, which requires you to think on your feet as well. So you can't actually predict how the game's going to go. It's not like a game where you can win it before you've essentially won before the game's even started because of the team chosen or what have you, or decisions you made before the game started. Like for example, like the order in which you activate your units is based on these cards, which you sort of shuffle in to your deck, and then you see like, oh, this is the unit that I'm going to activate next, and there is some small manipulation of that. Um, but yeah, you can't truly know everything that's going to happen, and also like the objectives and things can move about like during the game. Um, so yeah, it's very much like a back and forth kind of battle, which they described, I believe, as like a sort of Saturday morning cartoon show. It's like you got these big characters coming in, having this big scrap, like epic stuff happens. They're having to think on their feet, and the game very much reflects that, I think. In terms of starter set, excellent terms of stuff that's included. So uh, you get your two teams there, so enough to get two people playing, get all your tokens and things. There's some really good terrain in there, with like really good elevation and stuff like that. Um, and then it's got lots of new releases on the way, and they've even given like a roadmap of those releases, so you know exactly what's going to be coming up. So you can have a look at that and see if that's something that looks interesting to you, like the direction it's going in. And again, I think it's just got legs on it, much like Marvel. There's so many things they can do with this. Um, that yeah, I think it's just got a bright future ahead of it. The combat's very interesting. So you have sort of like combat trees that you go down and stuff like that, when you're rolling your dice and that. So it's yeah, it's got like tactical depth to it, but it's also uh, pretty easy to just get up and running with this game as well. It's also much like Marvel, got free rules. You get the free updates, stuff like that. A bit unlike Marvel, the way the rules are written, uh, I suppose it doesn't like read as well. It's not as easy to take in, I would find, as Marvel, like when you're first just reading it. But I think once you actually start playing it, it makes sense. Um, but yeah, this is something like I've heard other people mention as well, is that the rules and that are not as well written, or not set out as well, I guess, as Marvel. In terms of negatives, I do think the starter set for this one is pretty expensive, and although you can find it at a discount, I don't think I've ever seen it personally below like £100, and it's always like 113 or something like that. Um, I think full price it's maybe like 150, 165, something like that. So I mean, it is a good chunk off the price, but and you do get a lot. But again, it is one of the pricier starter sets out there. You're sort of talking Games Workshop money at that point, which I don't think any other company should be doing. It's bad enough Games Workshop charge prices they do. Let's not encourage other companies to do the same. Um, so yeah, just something to be aware of anyway. Again, licensed models, so it can be a bit pricey. And I haven't seen as big a discounts on Shatterpoint stuff for some reason as I have on the Marvel stuff. Um, but yeah, maybe other people have found to be different. Um, there's also no mat included. Actually, as I mentioned, it's just like an additional purchase you need to make, which in this case, when it's already probably the most expensive starter set out there, uh, for like skirmish games. Someone will probably comment that it's definitely not, but certainly from the ones on this list, it's the most expensive. To then have to go and buy a mat as well, it's just a little bit cheeky, I think. Just a cardboard board included would have been excellent. And then my final negative for this: there's no emperor. No emperor. How are you supposed to do emperor impressions of people if there's no emperor? Shocking. shocking. Let's get him in there. Like, yeah, he's like a team by himself probably. He's so good. But yeah, and he should definitely have a rule whereby when you kill him, that somehow he returns. But anyway, that's enough of that. But yeah, I would like to see the Emperor in there. Is what I'm saying. But yeah, thank you for bearing with me. Sorry if my voice has given out at different points. It's been very, very hard not to cough throughout this and lose my breath. But yeah, thank you for sticking with it. If you do want to see more coverage of any of the games included here, I would love to hear from you and love to hear, if there's a game on this list that you're interested in that doesn't get a lot of love online, in terms of like YouTube coverage, stuff like that. I'd love to hear about that. I'm still in the early days of the channel, so still deciding like exactly what directions to focus on, what games to cover. And so yeah, I'd love to hear any sort of feedback that you have really. It's always helpful, and bless your heart if you're still here at this point. Thank you very, very much. I certainly appreciate it. And if you could please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're interested in Halo, do watch my Halo video as well. I would very much appreciate that. Thank you very much, and take care of yourselves.